Problem. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm joined by my partner, Monica, who you won't be seeing her, but she's going to be doing all the behind the scenes work with transitions on the slides. So big shout out to Monica. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot to cover today. And as Sarah mentioned, this is a really interactive session. So I'm going to be asking you questions. You can either answer them in the chat or come off mute. Or if you're really brave and want to turn on your videos, feel free to do that as well. But let's get started and review what we're going to cover today, today's agenda. So we're going to start out by evaluating your current state, what you're good at, what you enjoy, as well as something that might get in the way of career growth. So we're going to figure out where you're sitting right now. Then we're going to talk through different ways you can grow your career, including building out an action plan. So once you have the action plan, we're going to talk about how to activate it, because a plan is no good if you never do anything with it. And then finally, we're going to cover how to have career conversations with your leader to make sure you can show up strong in those conversations and really guide and own your own journey. Yes, sounds good. I can't see any of you, but I think maybe you're giving me thumbs up behind the camera. So that's great.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and kick things off with a series of questions to kind of get your minds active. I know it's the end of the day for most of you, so we're going to figure this out. Okay, so first things first. The first question is around your strengths. So I want you to think about something that you view as a strength. Another good way to think about this is, what have people complimented you on in your professional life? So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Go ahead and put something in the chat that you view as a strength. And if you want to come off mute, you can also share that way as well.
I expect to see a lot of analytical, since we are Adobe Analytics group here.
That's great. Okay, I'm seeing from Brandon Lynn, confidence. I love that strength. What a great strength. Okay, what else? What have people complimented you on during your professional career?
Oh, I know some of you, so I can start talking about you. Like AJ, she's really good at explaining stuff and using pictures and making sure like something that's complex can be easily understood.
Ooh, that's a really great strength. I'm seeing from Joshua, detailed. That's a strength that I wish I had. Aaron, response time and going beyond the ask. That is huge, especially when you're customer facing and working with anyone with sharp deadlines. Kelsey, collaboration. What a great skill to have. That's so important, especially now that we're digital first and everyone is behind a screen. Being able to bring that strength of collaboration is so huge. What else? I want to see at least one from each of you, because now I can see your names. So Eric, Eric, troubleshooting / agile, really, really good. Again, this is something that I bet has come to the top of almost everyone's list once we transition to everything with COVID, right? You have to know how to troubleshoot. You have to know how to navigate different scenarios. Absolutely. Anything else? You can put in more than one, by the way.
No, here, I'm going to pick up my coworker, Chris. He is really great at taking concepts that are applied like in other industries and applying it to his industry.
I love that. The ability to translate that concept is really awesome and really important. I'm seeing, oh yeah, great. Chris is saying thank you. Kelsey, instills trust. That is a huge skill. And it actually combines a bunch of different skills in itself. Trust is a really multi-layered piece. Let's see. I'm seeing Tonk Tonk, being able to see the whole forest and then being able to focus on the individual tree. What a poetic way to say that. And absolutely being able to see the whole landscape, but also focus on individual needs. That's incredible. Relationship building and collaborations. I'm not sure how to say your name. Renaa, not sure. You tell me, but love that. So important. Help me with names too. Okay. So the reason why we started with your strengths is because everyone has a strength, whether you decided to put it in the chat or not, which is fine, or whether you decided to raise your hand or not, that's totally fine. But it's really important to get clear on what you are naturally suited to, what you naturally feel good doing, and something that has gone well for you in your professional career as you're thinking about shaping your career from here on out. because you want that to be one of the building blocks you bring towards your career journey. So, next, we're going to ask another fun question. I want you to consider something that you're very passionate about. So, considering that, even if no one paid you, think about this. What would you do for free? Again, put it in the chat or come off mute. And I've gotten some really interesting answers to this question, like napping, which any and all answers are welcome. So, what would you do for free if no one paid you? Ooh, Brandy Lynn, be a foster parent. That's beautiful.
I don't know, for some reason my chat is not working. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm giving a chance to do something for free, I'll probably be a food taster.
Oh, I love that. That's brave. That's very brave. So you have a sense of adventure and bravery. I love that.
I don't know about that, but definitely I'm open to trying out different cuisines and different forms of food per se.
Yeah. So an open mindset. Beautiful. Beautiful. Aaron, testing new tech and features. Absolutely. What else? Think about this. This is fun. What would you do for free? Sarah, what would you do for free?
Gosh, well, I was wondering who was getting paid for napping that they would nap for free. I'm like, wait, I am in the wrong gig if someone's getting paid to sleep. But oh man, what would I do for free? I don't know. Maybe like something with other people. Like I want to like cheer other people on. Like just make them feel good. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Now, this doesn't have to be like a formal job either, right? So think about anything. It could be hiking, it could be road biking, it could be nothing active at all. So it could be anything. I'm seeing Tong Tong interview people and help them tell their stories. Yes, Monica, makeovers. I love that. I would sign you up for me. Chris, fly fish. I grew up on a fly fishing river, so I love that. Cooking and baking, Tong Tong, perfect. I love the Great British Bake Off. So I also, if I could bake, would love to do that. AJ used to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity to build houses. Absolutely. So when you're thinking about this, keep going, keep thinking. But the reason why I'm asking you this question is because it uncovers something that you're passionate about, something that you care about doing, whether that's building houses or whether that's baking. It could be a wide range of things, but I want you to hone in on that feeling. So picture that thing that you put in the chat or that you didn't say either. So picture that one thing that you would do for free. Give me a thumbs up if you can think of at least one thing that you would do for free. Yep. Okay. Think about that. And when you're doing that, how do you feel? You don't have to put that in the chat, but think about that. How do you feel when you're doing that thing that you would do for free? Yeah. Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel happy? Do you feel like you're making a difference? Kelsey called out hiking, Peloton, playing with puppies. Yes, I love that. Parenting. And the reason why we consider those passions, the reasons why we consider what you would do for free is because that's another building block. And being aware of those emotions that you feel when you're doing something that you're passionate about is really important when you're thinking about crafting your career and making it authentic to you. Because everyone is going to have different emotions, whether, again, like Chris called out, whether that's peaceful or whether that's excited or whether that's purposeful. Great call out, Stephen. That's an emotion that you need to be in tune with so that you can understand how to guide your career. You can follow that feeling. You can follow that peace, that comfort, whatever that feeling is. That's another building block to finding a purposeful and meaningful career. Gratitude. Love that, Gretchen. Absolutely. So we talked about your strengths. We talked about your passions, what you would do for free, and the feelings that come up when you are doing those things. Then finally, we're going to talk about a scenario. So let's go and think about this. I want you to think about a day when you went to work and you loved your day. Not one of those like, when is the day going to end? Get me out of here. Like the day where you're like, yes, I absolutely love the work that I'm doing. I want to hear from you. What are you doing on a day like that? What are you doing? And it doesn't have to be detailed. It can be if you want to be. If you want to tell me all the details, analytic stuff you're doing, give it to me. But it could be I'm working with others. It could be I had a great conversation with my boss. So give me those are some examples. I'm going to give you a second to think because this one's a little bit deeper.
I think
So
just solving a problem that's been bugging me for a while, a few days or particular naughty problem that I couldn't have an answer to right away that needed research and time.
yes, Gretchen, absolutely. Joshua said a similar thing, solving problems, that feeling, it's like, yes, I accomplished something that's been really tough and I came to the end of it. I solved it. Not spending time in meetings all day. Yes, agreed.
I think it
Chris,
was. Sorry, shall I go ahead, Claire?
yeah, please go.
I think this was sometime back. I think around 2 months back, kind of close of the day, and I saw that there was an additional amount deposited from my employer in my account, and I was a little surprised. Like maybe there has been a miscalculation from them. But then digging up a little bit more, I figured it out that it was not. It was kind of an incentive for my performance where it came through as the recognition as the top performer for the year. And there was no formal communication out of it, which is a pleasantly surprising thing. But the point is, there were things that have happened which have contributed to, and seeing that getting recognized in whatever little form it might be. It could be just simple kind words. Doesn't have to be something as a hefty sum or a certificate or anything. Maybe a kind word from your peers or from your leadership. That's something which makes me feel that it has been really nice, irrespective of all the other craziness that goes around, especially around after we are experience the kind of work environment in the last 2 years being completely remote.
Yeah. So that acknowledgement for a job well done or hard work, I really like that call out. I'm also seeing Chris crack some jokes, innovative solutions, troll my boss, impact. So there's some lightheartedness there, right? But the feeling and sentiment comes through really well. Brandy Lynn, solving a fire drill successfully and quickly. Yes, that feeling of accomplishment, similar to that problem solving aspect. Tong Tong, having meetings, but most of the meetings are very productive and solve some historical problems. Like, yes, I'm seeing a common theme here. Like, you you love your day, you love the work that you do when you're solving these complex problems or when you're solving problems that have caused you a headache for a while. Maybe it's collaboratively, maybe it's individually. Kelsey, a good mix of activities, solving problems, making plans, encouraging data actionability, and helping others be successful. That sounds like a great day. Even if you're not in analytics, that sounds like a great day. So, absolutely. So we talk about all these things because even without conscious thought, these three questions have likely influenced how you've shaped your career in some way. Now, you may not have necessarily given time or space to think about these questions specifically, but the utilization of your strengths, following your passions or what you care about or a feeling, and then understanding what makes you happy in a day to day work environment have likely been a part of your building blocks to your career to this point. So, leaning into these areas and having intentional conversations about them with your leader can really support you in discovering new levels of your career development. So, I would encourage you to spend some more time considering these questions. I know they were a little bit rapid fire, and I know that some people's brains, especially at the end of the day, are like, a little checked out and take some time to process. So, feel free to come back to these questions and spend time reflecting on them. Which brings me to my next question. I promise this is not all questions. But when you think about these answers, have you shared these with your leader? Not maybe in this specific format, but have you shared these themes with your leader? Do you think they're aware of your strengths? Do they understand what inspires you or what you're passionate about? Do they know what drives you in a day to day work environment or what gives you purpose in the work you do? This is kind of, you don't have to say yes or no in the chat. This is more of like a think about it kind of thing. But if you haven't had this, or if your leader is not aware of this, I would encourage you to start having conversations with the frame of those three questions that we talked about. your strengths, what work inspires you, and what gives you purpose in the work you do every day. Because all of these categories are important in having meaningful career conversations. So we're going to do a pulse check and no judgment on this. I would love to hear from you. Answer A, B, C, or D. When was the last time you had a true career conversation with your manager? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you're brave. I know it's not random. I'm sorry. But okay, yeah, perfect. Put it, I'm going to give you a second. Go ahead and put a letter in there. Okay, so I'm seeing a good spread between I've never had a career conversation or all the way up into you've had a career conversation within the last month, which is great. We're spanning the whole gamut here, which is amazing. But the truth is, even though we know these career conversations are important, they don't often happen as frequently, or even if they do happen, they aren't as meaningful as they could be. So we want to make sure that we're not holding anything back. And we're going to give you some tools to support you in these conversations. But before we do, I'm going to address something that often impedes us when we're trying to have career conversations. It's called imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome reflects a belief that you're an inadequate and incompetent failure, despite evidence that indicates you are skilled and successful. It's often described as an intense feeling that others have an inflated perception of your abilities. Now, what I want to say about this is this definition is a really big, feels heavy, but it doesn't always imposter syndrome doesn't always have to come into play as like you're totally inadequate or you're totally incompetent. Sometimes it can be that little nagging doubt, like maybe I don't contribute that much, or maybe I'm not as good as this person, or maybe I shouldn't speak up in this meeting because I've already said something once. It can be as little as that, but it discourages us from having consistent career conversations and can make us downplay our accomplishments to the point where we feel undeserving of them. So I just want to call this out because this is actually a lot more common than we like to think. And I think studies show like 1 in 5 people suffer from some level of imposter syndrome. So it's likely that at least some of us on the call have experienced this feeling. So it doesn't matter if you're a director or an individual contributor, anyone can suffer from this. And it's important to be aware of it so that you can problem solve accordingly. And again, it comes in all different forms. So this is good for you, whether you might feel a twinge of imposter syndrome or whether it might be full blown in your life. So here's some things that you can do if this is resonating with you at all. If you've ever felt this way, these are good tips for you to be aware of. So first, practice owning and celebrating your accomplishments. Don't downplay the work you do. I have a lot of people that I work with that keep a win journal, that document the wins that they have in their careers or in like a day-to-day space so that they can look back and also they can bring that to career conversations. Has anyone done anything like that? Like had a win journal or documented their successes in that way? Give me a thumbs up in the chat or you can, yeah. Okay, yes, right? It's very helpful. And it also is helpful to remind yourself of all the things that you're doing because sometimes we get in the motions, we get doing all the things that we're doing, and then we're asked to reflect on them. Months later, we're like, yeah, I did this and this, but you forget about all the small wins that you also had throughout the year. So document those successes. Second, prioritize self-care and mental health. Self-care is not selfish. If we've learned anything through the last few years, we've got to make sure we prioritize our whole self. So take time for yourself. Make sure that you're not pushing yourself over the limit. You need to be able to remember that you are enough. What you bring to the table is great. And when you try and overload your mental health and your physical health, it can harm your relationship with yourself and others. So prioritize that self-care. Third one, see yourself as a work in progress. This is tough, especially for people who are really established in their careers. People who are established in their careers think like, I've got it. I've been in this role. I've accomplished a lot of things that I want to do. And they don't understand that like growth and learning are lifelong skills. And that doesn't mean that you're less than, it doesn't mean you haven't accomplished things, but you can't beat yourself up for impossibly high standards. You have to remember that growth is constant, and that should be a part of who you are, and see yourself as a work in progress, right? Don't diminish that growth. And then finally, ask for help when you need it. Remember that it's okay to be independent, but don't refuse assistance to prove your worth. Yes? Clear. Okay. So in fact, this is how it works, right? Everyone's career journey is going to have ups and downs. We're going to have twinges of imposter syndrome. We're going to have full-blown bouts of it. But understanding how to combat that and really take ownership of your own journey is all about reframing how we think about career growth. There's no longer one way to think about career success and development. Now, this is a quote from Adobe's Chief People Office of Executive VP and Employee Experience, Gloria Chen, who I adore. She said this: view your career as a corporate jungle gym versus a corporate ladder. Don't put yourself in a box of what success looks like. It's not always about looking up, but also looking out. Now, Gloria speaks from experience. So her background is in engineering, but she also has a master's degree in mathematics. So HR represented a stretch opportunity at Adobe. Even though she didn't set out to be CPO and work in HR, her path took some unexpected turns, right? Who knew that when she was getting her master's in mathematics, she would end up being the VP of Employee Experience? Probably not Gloria. But that doesn't mean she wasn't prepared for the path to change. So the key to remember here is that there are so many paths to success. Remember those playground jungle gyms. There's not just one way to climb them, right? Your career development is yours to define. And when you actively and intentionally manage your career, you'll find it a lot more fulfilling. When you think about your strengths, when you think about your passions, when you think about what lights you up, that's what's going to make it fulfilling. So let's look at how to do that. We're going to break it down into a simple process. Even though career growth is never simple, I think it's helpful to get an idea of an outline to give you clarity on how you want to grow, what your next step can be, and to have the crucial conversations to reach your goals. So again, many of you may be well established in your careers, and that's great. But remember, development should never be stagnant. This is something that you should continuously look at. So we're going to go through each of these steps so you can walk away with that actionable plan of how you want to continue to develop. So first, let's talk about growth categories. Now, remember that jungle gym, right? Most of us have grown up hearing about career growth as being vertical, that familiar idea of climbing the corporate ladder. But today we're going to expand how we think about career growth and career success. So here's some categories to consider when you're thinking about how you want to grow your career next. The first one, vertical, moving up. This is the option that I noted before, right? This is the one we're most familiar with. It's career growth in the traditional sense, moving vertically up in your direct path, right? From individual contributor to manager to senior manager to director, whatever that looks like in your respective role. This is a great option. I'm not downplaying this. This is still a great option. And it may be the exact one that you want. And if that's the case, great. But if not, here's some other ways you can think about how you can grow. The second one is lateral. So this is the option of making lateral moves. This could be moving into the same level position, but in a business unit that's different than yours, or even a different company, right? That's more aligned with your career goals. So lateral movement, still career growth, still career development. The third one is enrichment, and this is growing in place. This is sharpening your skills within your current remit and becoming an expert in your current role. This is the one that often gets neglected as well because we don't think of it as traditional career growth. And then finally, exploration. So exploration is all about investigating new possibilities and figuring out what aligns best with your career goals. So this can look like shadowing other roles, doing job rotations, or even just creating coffee chats with people who have your dream role. Right? So I want you to take a second now. That was a lot of information coming at you. And think about which path resonates most with you right now. You might even be surprised. You've been working on one and didn't know that it had a name. So often, again, that's the case with enrichment. People are like, wait, that's career growth? And I'm like, absolutely yes, that is. So take a moment and think about which of these paths resonate most with you. And if you don't have one, take a moment now and pick one. Okay, remember, whichever path you choose, knowing how you want to grow is important. So we're going to do a little pulse check. You've got a second. All right. I want to hear from you in the chat or your voice or your video, whatever. What career growth option makes the most sense for you right now? What's really resonating for you right now? Go ahead and pop it in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing vertical, enrichment, lateral. Absolutely. Keep them coming. Okay, perfect. So hopefully at least one of those was enlightening to you and resonated with you. But now that you know how you want to grow, let's get started on an action plan, because as I mentioned, it's great to know this information, but what good is it if you don't have any action plan behind it? So for this section, you might need to take out a little notebook, pop up the notes section of your phone, open a little section of your screen, whatever that looks like, because we're going to have you jot some notes down for yourself. The first step in creating an action plan is to understand and evaluate the resources available to you. Now, there are 3 categories that I want you to consider. The first one is experiences. So this can look like job shadowing, stretch assignments, job rotation, or maybe a deeper look within your current role, something a little bit more than what you currently do. The second one is relationships. So mentoring relationships, networking, finding a coach or coaching someone, getting feedback from a manager or teammates or colleagues. And then the final one is formal learning. These are books, videos, certifications, additional education. When we think about learning resources, typically we are skewed towards the right side. So that formal learning, we think, oh, I want to get better at my role. I better take a certification or get another certification. I want to, get promoted. I better take this on-demand learning course, right? But when you expand your view, what we've found from research that is actually experiences and relationships are much more tied to success and career growth than formal learning. So I want you to begin thinking about what resources are currently available to you as you develop your career through the lens of what you talked about, whether that's lateral movement or enrichment. So for instance, be jotting down some ideas, right? If you chose enrichment, for instance, for your career growth option, maybe there's an additional certification you want to get to be a really true expert in your role. Maybe your goal is lateral movement and you want to lean into relationships to see who you know and what opportunities are out there. Maybe you want to find a mentor to really help you get to that next level or connect you to someone in a different part of the business. So go ahead and jot down for one of these. You can choose experiences, relationships, or formal learning, something that you could do towards your career growth theme. We'll call it a theme. Okay. Give you a couple minutes on that. And there's also an opportunity for you to say, ooh, you know what? I'd actually like to find an experience that could help me in this. So just make note of that as well as something that you could take away and spend more time in later. Okay. I can't see your faces, but give me a thumbs up in the chat if you've got at least one thing written down for one of those categories. Oh, yes, Kelsey, I love that. Pursuing a coaching opportunity. Tong, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna wait for a couple more thumbs up in the chat and then we'll go on. But okay, I'm seeing some in the video. Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to combine that growth category and resources to create an action plan. Here we go. Sometimes it's really tough when you think about something nebulous like, oh, I want to have lateral movement, or oh, I want to have, enrichment in my current role. It can be hard to figure out, what do I actually do with that? So here's what we're going to do. You're going to write down on your piece of paper or your notes that career growth goal. So enrichment, vertical movement, lateral movement, exploration, write that at the top of your page. Then I want you to pick a short-term goal that could support that bigger career growth goal. This is something that you can achieve in the next 6 to 9 months. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be as simple as researching which coaching opportunity you want to take. Kelsey, to use your example, right? Doesn't have to be huge, but think of one short-term goal that would align up to that career growth goal. Maybe it's connecting to 2 new people via coffee chats for that lateral growth. Yeah? Perfect. Okay, now I want you to break that goal down even further to be creating an action plan. So your action plan today your action plan is what you can do today. Like maybe not, since we're at the end of the day, maybe tomorrow, maybe we'll give you till the end of the week, to be fair. Okay. But something you can do really soon to ultimately get you to that career growth goal. So spend more time thinking about what resources are available to you. Remember, we talked about those experiences, relationships, and formal learning, and decide, okay, where do I want to pour a little bit more time? And again, it can be as simple as connecting with a person in a coffee chat. It can be as simple as reading another book. So it doesn't have to be huge, but the point is you need to take active ownership over your career growth. And that includes doing things and setting up time to do them, right? So it's great to think about it, but take action, do something, and it doesn't have to be huge. Just take one step towards that career growth goal. Okay. I'm going to give you a second to write down one thing. And then you can either put it in the chat if you're brave, or you can give me a thumbs up that you've gotten one thing that you're going to do by the end of this week as your action plan. And I can see like 2 of you on the screen. So you can give me a virtual thumbs up. Okay, perfect. I've got 1 thumbs up. I'm going to wait for at least 3 thumbs before I move. Oh, AJ, Chris, Kelsey, that was quick.
And we will post this recording to the YouTube channel. I put the link in the chat that way, because I know like my resource is going to be coming back to this and re-listening to this video. So there's my thumbs up for that. My resource is this.
Brilliant. I love it. Okay, perfect. So the final step in this process is simple, and that is set a timeline for yourself. So once you know what action you want to take, make sure you set a timeline to complete it. And as I said, it's a simple but important final step. You can't just think of this idea and never do anything with it. Hold yourself accountable, set a timeline, and there you have it, right? You've spent time, you've already dedicated almost 40 minutes to yourself, actively focusing on developing your career. That's amazing. You've invested in yourself, and you've created a plan for how you're going to carry that on. So now that you've got a plan in place, it's important to have a meaningful conversation with your leader about it. And as we found out, we have an opportunity, all of us, to either have more consistent conversations or have more meaningful conversations. So I want you to think back on your experience with career conversations and put in the chat, what makes a really good career conversation? When you're thinking about the best one you've ever had, what are some elements of it? Sarah, I love this call out. Knowing that your leader truly has your best interest at heart. There's a high level of trust there. I really appreciate that. Brandon, I took my win journal to the conversation with me. It's like you already heard this before. Way to go. Yes, You documented those wins and you were able to articulate them in that conversation. What else? What makes a good career conversation? Yeah, tong tong, openness. Yes. And being honest with being true to yourself. Absolutely. That's essential. Being authentic to you is essential to having a good career conversation. What else would you say? Or is that it? It's not. You can do it. Okay, yeah. Advanced preparation is key for me. Coming in with the structure and desired outcomes. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it allows you to really drive that conversation and make it meaningful. So you've highlighted some really key pieces, but let's put it all together. So a meaningful career conversation is typically made up of a combination of these 5 things. First, appreciation of your strengths. So, Brandy Lynn, bringing your win journal, making sure that you document your unique talents, your wins, your skills, your strengths. Think about the questions that we talked about at the beginning, right? Your passions, the things that make you you. Okay. Then they assess capabilities. So, you talk about what your current capabilities are, where you want to grow and develop, and maybe assessing your individual and team performance so you know where you're landing currently. Then, anticipating the future, considering and anticipating trends in your industry, your organization, potential changes that are coming, and how that might affect you or your team. Fourth one, aligning priorities. So, understanding how your goals can align with the mission and vision of the organization. And then finally, accelerating learning development. So, connecting to mentors. I know some of my best career conversations. My leader said, "Oh, you are passionate about this. I know somebody who's great at this. Let me connect you to them." And that made for an awesome career conversation, right? So great career conversations do these things, right? They allow you to appreciate your strengths, assess your capabilities, anticipate the future, align your priorities, and accelerate your learning and development. And understand that not every conversation is going to be all 5 of these because that would be a very big conversation, but it will include parts of these. So if you're wondering, how do I drive this conversation? How do I make sure that I have a meaningful career conversation? Pick one of these themes and come to the table with it. Come prepared with it. Okay, so in a perfect world, all of these career conversations would be super straightforward, super meaningful, and relatively easy. But we know we don't live in a perfect world. So that can mean that sometimes we have differences in personality or tenure or a whole bunch of other factors that can play into making these kinds of conversations feel uncomfortable or feel like we can't be our authentic selves. So, what do we do in those situations? The answer is there's not a one size fits all solution to the problem, which I hate. I wish there was, but that's life, right? But there are 2 things that you can do to help you show up as strongly as possible in any career conversation that you have. So the first is be prepared. And this sounds simple, but Kelsey called this out. Setting a clear agenda with an outline of what's going to be discussed and practicing your answers, as silly as that can sound, can help you feel really confident in what you're saying and make sure that you communicate clearly what you want to say, especially if it's somewhat of a tricky conversation. It's helpful to have an agenda and practice what needs to be said. And the second is communicating with impact. So, this is often called having a strong executive presence, but it's something that everyone can do, regardless of who you're communicating with or what role you have. So, let's talk a little bit more about what it means to be prepared for a career conversation. So for me as a learner, I like to have specifics. Like I'm like, okay, yeah, be prepared, but what does that actually mean? Well, here's what it actually means. Okay. These are some things to consider prior to meeting with your manager when talking about your career goals. First thing is be open to your manager's perspective. Practice active listening and ask questions for understanding. Right. Sometimes I hear a lot when we're talking about careers like, oh, I don't want to talk to my manager about changing because they won't want me to go or they won't want to support me in this. But I would ask you to be brave and actively listen and ask questions. Then allow time for exploration. So your career conversation shouldn't be one and done. This should be something that's ongoing and evolving and that you're co-creating with your leader. Come prepared. We're going to hammer that one home, right? Bring ideas of where you're strong, where you might need development, and how you want to develop. Remember, we talked about those 3 categories? Those might be new categories for your leader to hear. So bring the way that you want to develop. Say, I want to build my relationships in this way so that I can get to this goal. How, can you support me in this? Who can you connect me with? Whatever that looks like, if they know how you want to develop, they're more likely to be able to give you more resources. And then finally, draft an IDP. If you don't have an individual development plan or some kind of form of that, start fleshing that out. Start figuring out how you want to develop specifically, not just through this, presentation or this topic, but like more fully, how do you want to grow and develop through your career? And then document the conversation. Make sure that you have a clear understanding between you and your leader on what was discussed and what the outcomes of that meeting were. And then follow up. Make a plan for your next conversation, for your next steps, because as I mentioned, it should not be one and done. So the good news is you might feel like, whoo, this is a lot to do, but we've already gone through a lot of it already. You've gone through the career development activity already and talked about how you want to grow and the resources you want to access. So you've done a lot of the necessary preparation already. So another thing that's helpful in feeling totally prepared is to understand some of the questions that could be brought up or some of the questions that you could bring up. So we're going to talk about those right now. So this is not a complete list, but it gives you a jumping off point for you to be able to think about what kinds of questions you should be ready to answer or ask in any career conversation. Or this is really great when you're thinking about meeting with other people, creating coffee chats. Like these are great questions to ask anyone who you want to know more about. So knowing your answers to these are going to help you feel more confident going into the conversation and allow you to guide it in the way that's meaningful to you, especially if your leader is not skilled in people growth and development. Because the reality is we want to think that every leader is a great coach, but that's not necessarily the case. So sometimes you need to be able to give meaningful direction when your leader is not as skilled in this area. So again, this recording will be available. You can screenshot this so you don't have to memorize these, but these are important things to be able to answer and ask questions around as you're having these conversations. Okay, so now that you know how to prepare, let's talk about how to show up strongly in your career conversation. Now, these things can feel really basic, but as my high school basketball coach used to tell me, the basics are essential for success. So, great reminders for all of us, even if it feels like you've heard this before. So, first, in order to communicate with impact, you must be clear with your words. Now, this is really important, especially if you're a little bit nervous about the conversation that you're going to have, or you anticipate it might be a little difficult. This is where practicing beforehand is really essential because you want to be understandable, powerful, and succinct. All of the leaders that I've ever talked with, especially when you get into those senior level leaders, they all want people to be succinct because their time is very precious. So if they're giving it to you, make sure that you come off in this way: clear, understandable, powerful, and succinct. This includes being aware of your typical filler words. Now, I know we all have them, and you probably heard 10 of mine during this presentation. So we all have filler words. You just need to be aware of them and watch out for them because they can really diminish how well you can communicate, especially with impact. I want to hear from you in the chat. This is just a fun one. If you know what your filler word is, put it in the chat. And I want to hear from you. And if you don't know what it is, ask for feedback from your colleagues or record yourself giving a presentation or talking about a topic, and you'll figure it out fairly quickly. Yes. Okay. I'm laughing. Or a blank stare. Yes. So be aware of those things because they're more second nature than you think, and you do them a lot more frequently than you think. All right. Tone of voice. So keep a good pace and volume and practice appropriate inflection to emphasize your ideas. Inflection is tricky, especially when you're talking through a camera and you feel like, oh, I'm going to watch myself, or I can hear my echo, or there's a lot of things that can be distracting. So don't be afraid to speak with passion and keep yourself rooted in authenticity. So to speak at a good pace and volume does not mean to be inauthentic to yourself. So if you naturally have a little bit more quiet of a voice, if you're naturally a little bit slower in pace, stay true to you. I'm not saying to do something different, but just be aware of how that is and show up as authentically as you can, because then you'll be believable. It's when you're trying to be something else that you come off as not authentic, and that's no good. Okay, and finally, practice strong body language. Now, a bunch of you are probably thinking, why does this matter, Claire? Because I can only see shoulders and above. So why does body language matter? I will tell you, it does still matter. So eye contact matters even in a virtual world, even if the people that you're looking at are down and your camera's up. Eye contact is important. Keep body language good. So roll your shoulders back. I know it's natural to hunch, but yeah, okay, AJ, love it. Roll those shoulders back. Absolutely. Yes. Try not to hunch or close off and stay relaxed and confident. Sit up tall. Use strong gestures. Avoid talking with your hands, which you've seen me do already in this conversation. So just know, keep the hands down. They can be distracting. And don't forget, it's okay to smile when appropriate, right? You don't have to be uber serious all the time. Be true to you. So, yes, those three things: words, tone of voice, body language. Be aware of how you're showing up. That's my biggest tip, because if you don't have awareness, then you can't ever improve. So, we probably all have videos of ourselves at this point, seeing that we've all been virtual forever. So take a look at those. As painful as it can be to see yourself in video or hear your own voice, it's really important to do. So again, these sound simple, but you'd be amazed at how many of us don't do them. Pay attention to the next video call you're on and see how many people don't practice these really simple things. My recommendation, as I mentioned, is to ask for feedback from a trusted colleague, specifically around these three categories, so you can get a realistic sense of how you're showing up. And with that, let's review what we covered today. It was a lot, but it was super fun. Okay, first, you evaluated your current state. So you know where you are, you know what your strengths are. Or if you don't really know, if that was a hard question to answer, spend some time thinking about it after this session. You understand what lights you up, what you're passionate about, what you would do even if you didn't get paid for it. What would you do, right? You know that. And you understand what a great day at work looks like. When you feel purposeful, when you feel like you're making a difference in your role, you're clear on all those things. So you know your current state, and you can also naturally see how well those things line up to what you do in your everyday work. You may find, whoa, I actually have a huge disconnect between my true strengths and what I love doing and the meaningful work and the actual work that I do every day. And so, again, awareness is king here. You need to understand where you're at in order to know where you want to go. Second, we talked about how you want to grow. We talked about expanding your view of career growth and how it isn't just traditional career ladders up and down, which are fine, but it's so much more than that. It's thinking about your career as a jungle gym. It's expanding and understanding that the way you thought about success and career growth is not the only way to think about it nowadays. Then we created a plan. It was a simple plan, but a meaningful plan, because it got you thinking about the steps that you need to take to get you to where you want to go. So I would encourage you to spend more time after this meeting, because it was a whirlwind today. We just kind of did one at a time, and think about how you really want to grow that. Create a plan that's authentic to you, that's meaningful to you, and that you can execute on. And then we talked about career conversations, how to have meaningful career conversations with your leader frequently, how to be prepared, how to communicate with influence, and really own and drive your career over time. And with that, that's it. That's our time for today. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for participating. I loved getting to virtually meet all of you. And we have a few minutes for questions. If you want to stay on, I'm happy to answer any questions. But if not, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, this was so wonderful. I tell everybody that listens to me that this is like the best HR like presentation I've been part of, and I have been part of a lot. We won't say how many years, but many years. So I really appreciate you coming and doing this. And yep, I'll make sure to get the recording out right away. But you guys, thank you so much. And I will open up, because since we have Claire, like, I feel like we have like a gym. So here's our chance to ask a gym, the guru, any question that you have. I'm opening up for any question. I'm opening Pandora's box there.
I have a question. By the way, thank you very much for this presentation, and thanks, Sarah, for always encouraging me to come. I always think like, oh, I don't know, and then I come and it's great. So, question I have is really around. So, I am a consultant, and so a lot of the time, the work that is outlined in terms of what I am responsible for is kind of laid out in some kind of statement of work, which means that things are kind of locked in. And in the consulting role, there is not a ton of like things that you can do to kind of change things. I guess the question is like, is there any advice in that kind of area for how to handle this situation?
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing is like you want a little bit more flexibility, more creativity for how you approach the work that you do. However, most of your work is scoped pretty clearly. So you have to work within that statement of work, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So my advice would be this is a really good opportunity to lean into enrichment and figure out how you up level your skills for the work that you do for any kind of consulting. So, when you look at your skill set and you look at what makes you a great consultant, are there areas where you feel passionate about, where you're like, you know what, I could do a lot more in this certain area, not attached to a statement of work at all, but like who you are and who you show up as a consultant. Is there an area that you can lean into that lights you up, that makes you feel like, yeah, this is making me even better at the work that I do? That would be my recommendation, because sometimes we are given strict parameters within our work, and we have to get creative about how we continue to grow and become the best that we can be inside those parameters.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's useful.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah, Gretchen. Lovely to be here. And feel free to reach out if you have any more questions on email.
You guys are wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.
See ya.
We'll get the next. I should have said the next. We'll do every other month this year. So this is February, March. So in April we'll reconvene, and I think Gretchen and I are thinking we can talk about like what are some of our favorite things from Summit. So Gretchen and I will get something posted so we can get it on our calendars and talk about what we loved, or when we're online, sometimes it's what was your favorite background. Like, did you see that person's background? So we'll have some fun.
We did have conversations about that last year, so I'm sure we can do it again this year.
Awesome. We'll see you guys. Thank you. Bye.